You think you choose who you're attracted to. You don't. Not really. The pull you feel toward one person and not another was largely decided long before you were born, by hundreds of thousands of years of ancestors making the highest stakes decision a human can make: who to build a life with, who to have children with. Every one of them succeeded at least once, or you would not be sitting here, and they left the instructions inside you. Think about that for a second. You are the current endpoint of an unbroken chain of successful mating stretching back not just through every human who ever lived, but through every creature before them, all the way down. Not one link in that chain failed to reproduce. Not one. That is a winning streak billions of years long, and you are what it produced. And every one of those ancestors, at least the human ones, faced a version of the same problem you scroll past on your phone tonight. Out of everyone, who here is the thing nobody tells you about ancient mate choice. It was not the cartoon. I need to kill that cartoon right now because it poisons everything. You know, the image, the brute in the fur, club in hand, dragging a woman by the hair back to his cave. It is on mugs. It is in old commercials, and it is complete nonsense. It gets the truth not just wrong, but backwards. Because in the actual ancient world, mate choice was one of the most powerful cards a woman held, and one of the most nerve-wracking tests a man ever had to pass. This wasn't a caveman grabbing whoever he wanted. This was a negotiation. A careful, high-stakes, deeply human negotiation. And by the end of this video, you're going to see that the ancient rules of that negotiation are still running quietly every time you feel that inexplicable pull toward one person across a room. And it is worth asking where that ugly cartoon even came from, because it didn't come from the evidence. It came from a much more recent era projecting its own assumptions backwards, imagining that because our ancestors were technologically simple, they must have been emotionally and socially simple too brutish, crude, governed by force. But that is a story that says more about the people who told it than about the ancient humans it claims to describe. Everything we actually know from the archaeology, from the study of living foragers, from the biology of our own bodies, points in the opposite direction. These were people with rich social lives, deep bonds, intricate webs of alliance and reputation and obligation. A person who tried to simply seize a mate by force in a small, tightly knit band would not have been a successful caveman. He'd have been a problem the whole group had every reason to deal with. Reputation mattered. How you treated people mattered. In a band of a few dozen people who depended on each other to survive, you could not behave like a monster and expect anyone to build a life with you. So let's throw out the club and drag myth and ask what actually happened. What was an ancient human, standing at the single most important decision of their life, actually looking for? To answer that, we need to understand the stakes, and the stakes were not equal. This is one of the most important ideas in all of evolutionary biology, and it comes from a researcher named Robert Trivers, who in the early 1970 seconds laid out something called parental investment theory. And the core insight is simple, and it changes everything about how you see attraction. For our ancestors, having a child cost the two parents wildly different amounts. For a woman, a child meant 9 months of pregnancy in a dangerous world followed by years of nursing and care. It was an enormous, unavoidable, physically costly investment, and she could only have so many children in a lifetime. For a man, the minimum biological investment could, in principle, be far smaller. That asymmetry has a massive consequence. When one side of a deal is paying far more, that side is going to be far, far choosier about who they make the deal with. And so, across countless species, including ours, a pattern emerges. The sex that invests more, which in humans skews heavily toward the female, tends to be the one doing the selecting. The choosing, this flips the cartoon on its head. Ancient women were very often not passive prizes to be seized. They were the choosers, and their choice was one of the most consequential forces in the whole story of human survival. A woman choosing well or badly shaped whether her children lived. That is real power. That is the opposite of being dragged anywhere. And I want to slow down here, because this idea explains so much of what you feel and see in the world today. Once you understand it, think about it from her side. In the ancient world, she is making a decision that her body will pay for at enormous cost and real risk to her life. Over years, a bad choice isn't a bad date. A bad choice could mean a child that doesn't survive, or being abandoned in a dangerous world with a helpless infant. When the price of a mistake is that high, evolution does not reward the casual, the impulsive, the easily impressed. It rewards the careful, the discerning, the one who reads a potential partner closely and does not settle for a flashy surface. Now think about it from his side. If the women around him are choosers, careful and discerning, then he faces a challenge. He can't simply take. He has to be chosen. He has to prove something, demonstrate something, earn a yes from someone who is weighing him seriously against every other option. That pressure, the pressure to display, to prove worth, to compete not with a club, but with evidence of what kind of partner you'd be, shaped the male half of our species just as deeply. The anxiety a person feels today wondering, am I good enough? Will they choose me? Is not a modern insecurity. It is one of the oldest feelings a human being can have. So if she was choosing, what was she choosing for? And here is where it gets genuinely fascinating, because the answer is not what the gym and muscles crowd might tell you. Yes, physical cues mattered across human cultures. Certain signals show up again and again as attractive, and evolutionary psychologists argue they're attractive because they were once reliable signals of health and fertility. Clear skin, symmetry of the face and body, signs of strength and vitality. These weren't shallow preferences. In a world with no doctors, no medicine, no way to check anyone's health, the body was the only medical chart available. A symmetrical, clear, vital appearance was, in effect, a walking advertisement that said, my immune system works, my genes are sound, I can survive this brutal world. Attraction to those signals wasn't vanity. It was your ancestors reading the only health data they had. But, and this is the crucial, but humans are not most animals, because for us, the choice was never only about the body. And this is the part I most want you to sit with. Let me throw something at you that might sound wild, but is central to what makes human love human. In many species, the male contributes genes and nothing else, and then he is gone. But humans evolved something rarer and stranger. We evolved pair bonding and long-term male investment in children. Human babies are famously absurdly helpless for years. Raising one to survival was too big a job in the ancient world, for one person alone. Which means for an ancient woman, the single most important question about a potential mate was often not, is he the strongest? It was a far deeper question. Will he stay? Think about how much that changes. If you need a partner for years, not a moment, then strength alone is nearly worthless. What you actually need to assess is character, reliability, generosity, kindness. Will this person share food when times are hard or hoard it? Will they protect and provide for a child or vanish? Are they loyal to the group or selfish? Suddenly, the most attractive traits aren't the flashiest ones. They're the ones that predict a good partner and a good parent over the long, hard haul of raising a family in a dangerous world. And here is why this is such a hard problem and such an interesting one. Character is invisible. You can see that someone is strong. You can see that someone is symmetrical and healthy, but you cannot see, just by looking, whether someone is loyal or generous or will still be at your side through a brutal winter 3 years from now. That information is hidden inside a person, and yet it was the most important information of all. So how do you read something you can't see? You watch. Over time, you look for signals that are hard to fake. You notice how a person treats those who can do nothing for them, the old, the sick, the children who aren't theirs. You notice whether they share when sharing costs them something. You notice whether their words and their actions match across seasons. Ancient courtship, then, may often have been less a lightning bolt and more a long, patient reading of another person's true character through their behavior over time. The butterflies got you interested, but the real decision was made by watching carefully whether someone was who they appeared to be, and notice that is still exactly how the deepest human bonds form today. Attraction is fast, trust is slow. That split is ancient. And this is where we find some beautiful evidence hiding in plain sight in the behavior of living hunter-gatherer societies that anthropologists have studied closely. Take the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth living something close to a traditional foraging life. When researchers have asked Hadza men and women what they want in a spouse, the answers are revealing. Yes, some looks and youth get mentioned. But over and over, near the top of the list, especially from women, is a very particular quality. A good forager, a good provider, a hard worker, someone whose skills and effort will actually feed a family. It is not the loudest or the flashiest who wins, it is the one who can reliably deliver and who is willing to. Now watch how this connects to the way ancient humans might have actually courted, because it is genuinely moving. If character and provisioning are what matter, then the way you prove yourself as a mate is not by showing off raw dominance. It is by demonstrating that you are generous and capable. And this may be the deep root of one of the oldest romantic gestures there is. The gift, the provision, the hunter who brings back meat and shares it, not because he has to, but as a signal that says, look what I can provide. And look, I am willing to provide it to you. Anthropologists studying foragers have noticed exactly this, that successful hunters often gain something in social and romantic standing, not just because of the calories, but because of what the hunting proves: skill, persistence, generosity, the willingness to take a risk and share the reward. A man handing over the best cut of meat to someone he is drawn to is not so different from a person today, paying for a thoughtful dinner. It is the same ancient signal in a new costume. I can provide, and I choose to provide for you. And the ornaments tell a story too. Remember all those beads and pendants and carefully made decorative objects we find in the archaeological record, going back tens of thousands of years. We often talk about them as symbols of status or spirituality, and they were. But signals of status and skill and creativity are also inescapably part of the mating story. To wear something beautiful and difficult to make is to advertise something about yourself, your skill, your resources, your place in the group. The same way a peacock's tail says something, a string of painstakingly carved beads said something too, to the people watching across the fire. And think about what a piece of jewelry actually proves to an ancient eye. It proves you had the skill to make it or the standing to obtain it. It proves you had time and resources to spare on something beyond bare survival, which is itself a signal of competence. It proves an eye for beauty, a capacity for care and patience and craft. All of those are exactly the qualities you'd want in a long-term partner. So the impulse to adorn yourself before you go looking for love, the instinct that sends a modern person to dress carefully before a first date, is not a shallow recent invention. It is tens of thousands of years old. Your ancestors were doing the very same thing with shell and bone and ochre, sending the very same message across the very same kind of gathering. Notice me. See what I am capable of. Consider me. So step back and look at the picture that is emerging, because it is the opposite of the brute with the club. Ancient mate choice appears to have been a rich, mutual, deeply social process. Women often the choosier sex because they paid the higher price, reading potential partners not just for health but for character, reliability, and generosity. Men competing not merely by dominance but by demonstrating skill, provision, and loyalty, both sides reading 100 subtle signals, physical and behavioral, in a high-stakes attempt to answer the oldest question there is this the one I bet my future on? Now, we have to talk about the turn this story takes, because that relatively free, mutual choosing did not last forever. And this is the uncomfortable part. For much of the deep human past, in small mobile bands, mate choice seems to have been comparatively personal. Your own preferences, your own reading of a partner, carried real weight. But as human societies changed, as we settled down, as farming created stored wealth, land, herds, and property that could be owned and inherited, something shifted. Suddenly, a marriage wasn't only a bond between two people. It became a transfer of resources, an alliance between families, a way to move property, secure land, forge political ties, and control lineage. And in that new world, individual choice, especially a woman's choice, often got squeezed out. Marriages became arrangements made by families, by fathers, by clans, for reasons that had little to do with the two people involved. The personal negotiation we've been describing got overridden, in many societies, by economics and politics and the control of inheritance. The freedom to choose your own mate, which may have been relatively normal for much of our deep history, became in many places a privilege rather than a given. It is worth sitting with the irony. In some ways, the ancient forager may have had more say in this most personal of choices than many people did in the millennia that followed, and you can see the fingerprints of that shift all over recorded history. The dowry and the bride price, marriage as a treaty between kingdoms, daughters married off to seal alliances, whole systems of custom and law built to control who could pair with whom, and above all to control the choices of women, because a woman's choice now had property and lineage riding on it. The deep, personal, mutual reading of another human being, the thing that may have guided our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years, got buried under layers of family strategy and social control. It never disappeared. It just went underground, surviving in secret courtships, in forbidden love, in the endless human tendency to want the person your family didn't pick for you. That tension between the heart's ancient choosing and society's demands has fueled more stories, more songs, more tragedies than almost anything else we've ever created. It is, in a sense, the friction between two different eras of our own history, still grinding away inside us. So how did ancient humans choose a mate? And here is the honest answer, the one this channel always owes you: we cannot watch an Ice Age courtship. We can't interview a couple who met across a fire 40,000 years ago and ask what drew them together. The feelings, the glances, the specific moments of ancient love are gone, and they left no fossils. Anyone who claims to know exactly how it felt is guessing. But we are not without evidence, and the evidence points somewhere remarkable. We can read the deep logic of parental investment, which tells us why one sex was often choosier. We can study living foraging peoples, who show us mate choice built around provisioning character and skill far more than raw dominance. We can look at the ornaments and the sharing of food and see the ancient signals of generosity and worth, and we can look inward at the machinery still running in ourselves and recognize the same instincts firing in a candlelit restaurant or a phone screen full of faces. The specifics are lost. The pattern is written all over us because that is the part I want to leave you with. The next time you feel that pull, that inexplicable draw toward one particular person, understand what it actually is. It is not random. It is not new. It is the faint, persistent echo of the single most important decision your ancestors ever made, over and over. For hundreds of thousands of years, when you find yourself drawn to someone kind, someone generous, someone who shares, someone who stays, you are not being sentimental. You are running ancient, battle-tested software that once decided whether children lived or died. The candlelit dinner is a hunt. The thoughtful gift is a shared kill. The quiet question underneath all your modern romance is the same question asked around that ancient fire. Will you stay? Will you share? Can I build a life with you? They didn't have our words for it. They didn't have our rituals, or weddings, our apps, our songs. But they felt the pull, they made the choice, and they got it right often enough that here you are, feeling the very same thing, reading the very same signals, asking the very same ancient question. Love, it turns out, is one of the oldest technologies we have, and you inherited it fully assembled from people whose names you'll never know. So here is my question for you. When you think about what actually draws you to someone, how much of it feels like a real choice, and how much feels like something older choosing for you? I'm genuinely curious how that sits with you. Let me know in the comments. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.